Hello and welcome to Exposing the Truth Radio. I'm Aaron Jackson from Exposing, and I'm joined here today by MyKill Mayhem from the United Slaves of Amerika music project. Hi, Michael.
Hey, Aaron. How you doing tonight?
Is MyKill an okay name to call you today?
Certainly, yes, and thanks for having me on.
So, just to start off, can you tell us a bit about what your life was like before you started writing music, and before you started doing anything related to the truth movement?
Well, I've been playing music as long as I can remember, so I don't remember too much about what life was like before then. But certainly, how I came to start into researching, government's policies and things like that is because of the fact that I was put on Ritalin at 3.5 because I'm ADHD, and as I got older, I found that smoking marijuana had the same effect for me without the harmful side effects and the erratic behavior that I would have on the Ritalin. So I just switched over to using marijuana then to treat. It definitely developed my powers of concentration, and like I said, didn't have any of the harmful side effects. So I started off turning a few bags to my friends just to kind of get mine on the cheap or for free, and it kind of grew into a business. And then before I knew it, I ended up getting busted by the cops, and they took about a quarter pound of weed out of my house. And 3 weeks later, I got a letter from the state attorney's office saying there was no evidence to prosecute me at this time. So I started asking some questions, when they took a quarter pound of weed. Yeah, they just kept it, So basically, I got robbed at badge point.
Yeah,
so
I've heard that story multiple times.
I'm sure. It goes on all over the world and every day, no doubt about it. But that was, my moment of awakening, where I said, hey, something's wrong here. They say that drugs are bad for us, and they've got this war on drugs, but then they just keep it and sell it, smoke it themselves, who knows. But they did something with it. They didn't turn it in, So,
yeah,
once I started probing further,
I read on your profile that you were a U.S. Army Gulf War era veteran. So how does that kind of add to your mindset, add to your questioning, and surely that has some effect on the way you think around the kind of truth movement.
Yeah, the Gulf War era veteran is a loosely applied term because of the fact that that's what I'm considered by the VA. The term of my service felt in that time. So I was never in the Gulf War, fortunately enough, but I served totally during peacetime, 87 to 90, was stationed in Augsburg, Germany, and it was basically a day job, for me, And that's part of the problem is the military is, given to people as, it's a day job, you're learning a skill, you get money for college, and they give you all these incentives. And then these poor reservists in our country, I don't know about, in the UK, but in our country, they called up reservists who were just supposed to be helping out in their own communities, in their states, and they got dragged over to Iraq and Afghanistan and, came back missing arms and legs if they came back at all, and they didn't sign on for that. So, I was raised to be very patriotic, as they raise all of us, all around the world, to be strongly for our nation, and our nation is right, and our nation is good, and when I found out the truth, like I say, when I started digging deeper after my incident, I find out the CIA and the DEA are both involved into running drugs into the country, which pretty much we all knew from Iran-Contra, but there's a lot, deeper involvement than just that. And so, I started finding out all of the other lies that were told. And, once I started delving that much deeper, it was just a point where, yes, I felt betrayed. I'd always believed in my country, believed that they were going to do the greatest amount of good for the greatest amount of people that they could. And I found out that they're doing the greatest amount of good they can for the fewest amount of people that they can. Those that call the shots.
Yeah, I've always believed had some kind of operation going with the people higher up in the organization, where they could easily just take drugs and sell them cheap to dealers that would make them money, make the DEA money, basically, the people working higher up in the organization. But also,
and basically, the way I understand it,
whenever they kind of suggest that someone's dealing drugs, then those people higher up in the DEA can say, I checked it out, they're not doing drugs, and then it kind of keeps a few people safe, and then it keeps them making money. It's very corrupt. I mean, there is some documentaries out there online. There's some on YouTube, one made by Vice, I think, that kind of proved the same situation, that there was a massive cocaine ring from this guy who was a guy in the DEA. But for the most part, it's kind of a conspiracy theory. But I expect that it is kind of like that, and even people going into DEA probably dealing drugs just to kind of stay safe.
Yeah, and definitely there are protocols that are within the CIA and the DEA that I can't remember specifically right now. It's in my book, What in the World is Going On in This Country, because, of course, like I say, coming into this research through the means that I did, of course, that comprised a good portion of my book, is what I found out about, their involvement in running drugs into the country. So it's really detailed there. It's, like I say, what in the world is going on in this country. And so, like I say, there are certain protocols that, these people don't have to tell on these people, and these people don't have to tell on these people, and it's all written into their guidelines, on how to, treat situations like that when they find out maybe somebody in the agency is dealing. And at certain levels,
seems similar.
Different protocols.
Seems similar to the situation in the Army, whereas a lot of the kind of rape victims don't get reported because, they basically just don't want to look bad.
Yep, yeah, it's an embarrassment to them, and of course they try to deny anything they can, just like another situation where, Patrick Tillman was an NFL star here in the States, and, he's earning millions of dollars a year, and he hears about, Iraq and Afghanistan attacked us, and we've got to go fight them. And, you can say whoever did it, I don't know that I would say I know who did it, but I definitely know our country let it happen, there were no fighter jets set up to scramble, so, just things like that. There were so many open doors. There's the August, I think it was 8th briefing from 2001, that they came out and later admitted to, that it was on President Bush's desk, that they were aware of it, but they did nothing about it. And so, he signed up, patriotic guy, believes in, he wants to go get the bad guys and we're the good guys, and the same scheme they set up for every country around the world, and he goes over there and he gets killed, and it was from friendly fire, and then they lied to his parents. His parents, don't make me cry on the radio. They lied to his parents about how he was killed, and then it all came out later on, like always does, and then they have to end up, with that embarrassment, but they try to avoid them at all costs, no doubt.
Yeah, seems kind of the same around like so many industries. The same kind of corruption seems to happen. They just hide things that are good, and to keep the numbers down. The yearly statistics and things. And even at the end of the year, there's so many different sorts of statistics of like how many people were killed, how many of the opposition's kind of civilians were killed, and the numbers are always bigger than expected as well.
And they're usually larger than reported. They're usually larger than reported as well. Just, for one case example, we have sanctions against Iran right now. And so that means we are killing thousands of children a day, and when they look at the numbers, you look who put the numbers out on the Iraq sanctions, and through the Clinton administration, and they put it at 500,000 children, and of course this is the UN, World Health Organization, that's putting out this information. So what do you think they're going to do? They hide it, just like they hide everything else. So it's one thing to say, and I agree with your assertion there, but certainly then what they do report is is grossly understated as well.
Yeah, it seems
because
the same kind of thing.
Interest.
It's like Monsanto kind of funding some research into genetically modified foods. It's always going to come out saying it's safe, regardless of what the research actually said.
And of course, then they're going to put their money into buying scientists, who want a nice fat paycheck, and because once again, that's the whole system is driven toward greed, and they want us to feel hate and fear and greed, and it separates us all from each other and keeps us from uniting and, really finding out what's going on, educating ourselves and uniting, to stand back against it and push back against it and say, this is not the way we want to see our world run.
Yeah, and you listed 3 things on the United Slaves of Amerika page that Americans can unite and do to change the world. And I'll just read quickly. Number 1 is ending U.S. wars and occupations. Second is ending the Federal Reserve and other international and national central banks. And the third is eliminating the corporatocracy and corruption in our government by establishing fair and ethical electoral reform and or impeachment, for a return to constitutional principle.
I've seen so many groups here in the U.S. There's Veterans for Peace, which I'm a part of, Code Pink, We Are Change, The World Can't Wait. There's so many different groups out there, and they all have their own agendas. And, that's, why I put that information there is because it's my call, to those of us who are, fighting to make the world a more just place and, a place where we don't have to kill each other, to get something done. We can do it diplomatically. We can think, we can use our brains, we can reason. But, all these groups have various different causes, and, they can't seem to just bring everybody together. And that's what we need more than anything. If we can make one strong voice out of our unity, then we can make change. When you look at the largest social reforms that you've ever seen in the world, say such as India, Gandhi is largely the one that is looked at as being responsible for it. He was certainly a leader, but he would have, told anybody else, you are a leader too. But they had enough social unrest and unhappiness at the time that they had the majority of the people that were aware of what was going on, were educated. I mean, it was obviously in their face, Britain is ruling them, So, when you have people that united, then pretty much there is no other option but for it to change. So, that's my call to all of these groups is let's form a coalition, and I think that we can agree on these 3 basic things, If we end the wars, I think that's something that any group, could say, okay, we're for that, I mean, who's going to say we're for war, other than the military-industrial complex and the world leaders, and the ones that control them, and end the Fed. I mean, it's a system that in every country, your country, countries all around the world, I think there's, the last count, 3 countries that didn't have a central bank, and I think Syria was one of them, so they're working on that right now, Yeah,
Iran is one of them as well.
Yep, and that's what I was going to mention that as well. Iran as well does not have a Rothschild-owned central bank, and so we know that all they do is create the money that their governments would already create anyways and print, and then they turn around and sell it back to us basically by buying our bonds, our country's bonds at interest. So we're paying a loan on our money for our country's economy. It's ridiculous. So once again, I don't see who could argue with that. Why should we pay interest on money that our Congresses, parliaments, whatever governing bodies we have can coin themselves? And as well, certainly we all know that the corporate influence, it's the buying and selling of votes and seats, and that's basically what it amounts to. And so, I don't see how anybody could argue that one either. Now, all of the other various issues that anybody may have to address, of course, we could deal with that, at another time. Once we get back to constitutional principles, most particularly I can speak for our country. I don't know so much to other countries, but once we can return back to our constitutional principles, and that's my biggest thing overall, is that we do so much damage around the world. I feel so terrible about it. I watch documentaries, I've seen videos of what we do around the world, and it's horrible. It's truly horrible. So, I think that if we can make change here, then we can make things better for everybody around the world. And I think that's what's most important.
Yeah, and we label these people heroes as well. We don't label the people, the nurses and the firefighters as much heroes. And there's even people kind of complaining, saying that, they're asking for more money or whatever, and they shouldn't be, they get enough money, or, there's plenty of them, and they're doing a bad job, things like that. But then people can come back from like Arab countries or wherever we're fighting and kill a bunch of innocent civilians and come back and be labeled as heroes.
Well, of course, but actually, generally speaking, and once again, I can only speak for America here, but generally speaking, once you come back, you are discredited. You are mentally challenged or mentally disabled. You are not to be basically trusted. Because they have to undermine what voice we have that are coming back. Like I say, I can't speak from experience on a battlefield myself, fortunately enough, but what these veterans are learning over there is how unjust what we are doing is. And so when they come back, they speak out about it. So our government has to discredit them. So actually they're not even heralded as heroes when they come back. They're discredited as, PTSD suffering, paranoid delusionaries, more so than heroes. And so, it's, of course, the dichotomy, where they want you to support the wars, so they say, hey, support the troops and get you in a patriotic fervor. But then when you come back home, which is the same thing that we here in this country found out after Vietnam, basically everybody that went over there and served, thought they were doing something right, was basically discarded when they got back, and fairly well forgotten.
All right, and as we're on this topic, I think we should play your song "Killing Is Sexy."
Yeah, actually, I was just thinking about that myself. Was where we were going there was pretty much bordering on the content there, because that's what it is basically a sarcastic statement about the kind of mindsets that they try to instill in us. So I just lay out pretty much a truthful breakdown of what's really driving their agendas, and how they try to coerce us into supporting it, because they need our support. That's another really important thing that, to me, to get out to people is that, they need our support to do it. If we stop giving them our support, they can't do it anymore. We have all the power.
So we'll just play this song, and then we'll come back to speaking a bit more about the music.
We
So that is Killing is Sexy by Slaves of Amerika. So, MyKill, what inspired you to write these songs about these kind of real issues?
Well, it's once I started finding everything out that there is, I just, I really felt once again betrayed, and I felt that most people that I know were raised the same way as I was, and we're still believing the same things that I used to believe. So I figured somebody needed to say something, which there are many other people such as yourself, of course, and it's growing all the time. It's really great to see, because I've been researching myself for 14 years, and just started getting active at about 9 years ago, in 2003, when we went to war in Iraq, and getting involved in marches and speaking at rallies and things like that. So in that time, it's a lot of people that I talk to online when I'm promoting my music and my ideas. Then they say to me, it's so frustrating, because it seems like it's going nowhere. And I say, well, that's because, you're not having the long-term perspective on it. And it's definitely growing all the time, that people are becoming more upset and more aware, of what's going on in the world around them.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you, do you believe the world's doomed, or that we can still save it? Coming up to the 21st of December 2012, do you think there's going to be any positive or negative change on that date?
Not that I'm nothing concrete that day, I would say. And I've heard conjecture too that the calendar has been misinterpreted and the date is wrong. But as I would think, I would take it that it means that we are moving into another phase. I don't know necessarily if that means evolution of consciousness, or if it just means another cycle within the solar system. But I think it's something along those lines. I don't think it's anything, where the Earth is going to explode or fall apart or anything like that. I'd say I just think that they're talking about a change, a new beginning.
Yeah, this week I'll be doing a show with Rob from Truth Exposed Radio, debunking a lot of the myths around the 2012 predictions, debunking the kind of doomsday predictions, talking about some previous doomsday predictions, and also the multiple interpretations of the date as well.
Yeah, like
so coming back to your music.
From the information that I've seen, definitely there's going to be something that begins at that point in time. But like I say, nothing tangible or concrete, I don't think that we'll be able to see.
Yeah, well, there's definitely going to be change if people believe there is change. And I think that's the same with any date and any person, really. And hopefully not too many people believe it and kind of become suicidal or give up once something positive doesn't happen overnight. Hopefully we'll get through it okay.
Yeah, to answer the other, part of your question, well, at least the way I took it, when you started off, is the world doomed? And, I really, think that a lot of people, have a lot of negative attitudes out there, and understandably so. The world we live in is, very troubled. But at the same time, if you're adding negativity into that energy field, putting that negative energy out there, it's certainly not going to get any better, So, positive is the only way to look at it, and I definitely think that, that there is certainly potentiality for change before it's too late. That's most particularly the question a lot of people think is, is it too late? Have we gone too far, in the direction of, say, tyranny and oppression? And, I say I don't think it's ever too late. And I think that as I wrote a piece called The Martial Art of Revolution, I said anyone who attempts to oppress or enslave the human spirit is someone who makes grandiose gestures by grasping at the wind and thinking that they can control it. The more you try to tighten down a people or a society, the more resistance you're going to get. So I just don't see how they think that a plan of tightening down this control grid is really going to work, because we can observe throughout history that it does not.
Yeah, there's a big cycle in history of kind of oppression and then revolution. It just keeps on happening in every culture.
Yeah, and it's just, depending on, who's in charge at the time, how long that cycle goes before we see the next one. But certainly we are in one of those times now, and I think that, once again, we'll see that the, quote-unquote empires will fall, and the people will regain their power back. But, how bad we get off, track before that happens is up to us. We all have to educate ourselves and educate each other. And of course, no matter how much research you've done, you can always learn something from somebody else. Like say, I was saying about Gandhi, there's no leaders, there's no followers. We're all in this together, because we all have a very vested interest in this. Our lives, the lives of our families, our children, our friends, our loved ones, So that's all it takes, is just all of us to educate ourselves, educate each other on, what issues are important, and then just keep spreading the word until people become aware enough to unite enough to where we can make that change. And of course, one of my things that's been very important to me lately to promote is nonviolent actions. Civil disobedience, protests, online, posting things online, trying to educate people. Anything that's nonviolent. And anything that we could do to show, unity, like say, if with marches, protests, things like that, then that just shows our strength and that our numbers are growing, So it's just that's what it's really all about at this point is it's an education phase, the way I see it, and we have to get already at a level of education where we can all stand together.
So coming back to the music. You had a previous band called Devolution, which did pretty well. Can you tell us what happened there and how it kind of changed from Devolution into the United Slaves of Amerika?
Devolution was a project name that I came up with around 1992. I saw that most people in my life weren't trying to improve themselves in any way. So I thought, to myself, it seems like as a species we're devolving if we aren't trying to improve ourselves every day, And so I just thought, devolution, that would be a great way to, summarize the way I'm kind of looking at the world is that, people need to be, improving themselves, and I'm not seeing that, so I wanted to make a statement. So I was doing that for well over a decade myself, and, just couldn't form a band around behind it, but I still had all these ideas pouring out of me. And around 2000, I hit the top of the charts online, college radio, things like that, here in the States. And so it kind of peaked, and then I got into another band, and then I just kind of used it as a side project, to get other ideas out that band was not accepting of, what didn't fit their style. And so that's exactly what happened in 2007 while I was still with a band called Sister Kill Cycle. I did a side project, and that one was entitled United Slaves of Amerika. So that was the first time I really, I'd already done songs touching on censorship and prejudice and, social issues, things like this, but, I really, went hard-hitting on the political end at that point. And then at a point when I just recently, was feeling like I was going to leave the other band, I went to go online and get Devolution registered on and start promoting Devolution. And there's so many Devolutions over the period of time. How would I have ever known that it would have been such a popular band name? But I had to fight them off the internet all the time. I had registered my trademark and done everything the right way, and so I had to chase all these other bands off the internet, and when I went to go register mine on Facebook and Reverb Nation, they were already taken. So I had to once again chase other Devolutions off, and I just figured it's not worth the fight anymore, and everything I'm doing is going to be musical activism, from this point forward. So I might as well just change the name over to United Slaves of Amerika. It makes more sense as a promotion of what message I'm trying to put out there.
So can you just tell us a bit about the name, United Slaves of Amerika? You spell America with a K rather than a C as well. What kind of meaning have you given to that?
It's just, once again, as we've discussed, the totalitarian, oppressive kind of state that it has become here in America is what I want to make a statement about. And it seems, more or less along the lines of a fascist dictatorship these days than it does the United States I was raised to believe in existed. So, I wanted to make a statement about that. So that's why I did change the spelling of America to using a K, was just to make it look socialist, fascist, and make a statement about where I think this country is headed and has been headed for some time.
Yeah, we're just going to have to go to a quick ad break, and then we'll come back talking about more about all these things that you do.
You're listening to A2Zen FM, life-altering talk radio. Anything from activism to Zen and everything in between, right here and now. Informative, inspiring, engaging. Our hosts provide you with the global news and educated advice you need to make a difference in your life, in your world. Knowledge is power. A2Zen.fm.
Exposing the Truth Radio intends to be as open and uncensored as possible. Freedom to express unpopular views is key to global evolution. Everything we post and allow posted is not necessarily reflective of the absolute truth, nor do we endorse every word or every piece of media here. Having stated this, we seek to post and broadcast highly accurate information from alternative, mainstream, and fringe sources. Remember to listen to Exposing the Truth Radio, and you decide.
This broadcast is not the views or opinions of A2Zen.fm nor any of the hosts here at A2Zen.fm radio and magazine. To contact Aaron, go to Facebook, Exposing the Truth, or exposingthetruth.info. Now let's get back to our hosts on Exposing the Truth here on A2Zen.fm.
Hello and welcome back to Exposing the Truth Radio. So I just wanted to ask you, you mentioned about your book earlier, What in the World is Going On in This Country. Can you tell us a bit about what that book's about, more than just, than the title insinuates?
Sure. It's basically I had read about 50 books, watched about 100 documentaries, and I wanted to condense information. I know that most people don't have the time to take to do all of that reading, and it's difficult reading. I'll have to admit, I had to keep a dictionary next to me. I won't say I'm any intellectual giant or anything like that. I just do hard research. I had a 4.0 GPA in college, and people would tell me, wow, you must be really smart. And I said, no, I just work really hard. So, I would have to keep a dictionary, so that's hard reading, when you have to refer to a dictionary and things like that, when you're reading books by scholars and statesmen who have Ivy League, college degrees and a higher level of education. So I figured, I want to put this into kind of more common terms, for other people to be able to get this information and condense it down. It's actually just about 75 pages. So I really, packed everything in there that I could, of what I had found out about all of the lies that our government tells us. To my knowledge at that time, I finished writing that in 2008, and I really wanted to get it finished up, during that year because we were in election year that year, and, with both Obama and Clinton, vying for the Democratic nomination at the time. And I wanted to get the information out there. First off, the two-party system is an illusion. They just use it to keep us separated and keep us arguing amongst each other instead of uniting to make a change. And that as well, there's just so much controversy, that people don't know about, generally speaking, because you're not going to hear it on the news. Where the Clintons have been involved in so many murders of, known associates. And, because of their drug trafficking in Mena, Arkansas, 2 teenagers were killed because they found out too much. They found a bale of cocaine that had gotten dropped off of a plane. And so they ended up dead. They said that they fell asleep on some train tracks. And first off, that doesn't seem a very likely story that anyone's going to do that. But the medical examiner's report said that there was other blunt force trauma to the head that was observable. So they were bludgeoned to death and then set on some railroad tracks and said the train hit them, and then people who knew about it started disappearing, ended up murdered, things like this. So there's a whole, trail of murder and conspiracy, following her around. And then Obama, I found out that Zbigniew Brzezinski, who was the NSA advisor for Carter, was Obama's foreign policy advisor for his campaign. And I said, well, if you're running with Zbigniew Brzezinski, you're running with the wrong crowd to do the right thing, no matter what you say at the podium. I know you are running with the wrong crowd. Just to give a little bit of background for the audience, Brzezinski wrote a book in 1998 called The Grand Chessboard, and he spoke about how they fomented the Afghanistan-Russian war, and he basically gloats about it and says we lured them into their own version of our Vietnam, and we did it to cripple them militarily and economically. And most people think that we showed up there in December when the fighting broke out between Russia and Afghanistan, but we were actually there in, it was either June or July, I'm not sure, but it was either June or July of '79. We were already there arming, funding, training Afghan troops and basically goading Russia into attacking Afghanistan. So we started that. And two, if you watch Rambo 3, they talk about it in there. They talk about it, oh, it's your Vietnam. And, it's just basically putting it right out there in people's faces. But, they never do it so much so that you really put it all together. So, once again, the book was just to, tie up loose ends like that, to condense the information that I had, read and observed, watching documentaries. And so some of the most notable authors I'd probably like to, note here is Howard Zinn. His A People's History of the United States is really excellent information. Basically everything that we're taught, probably in your country as well, and probably around the world, is just so false. And People's History of the United States really gives you a lot of perspective on what really happened in our history. And also Overthrow by Stephen Kinzer is an excellent book as well. Talks about the American Empire and how we not only militarily but diplomatically with the CIA and our embassies and things like that, overthrow governments. And of course, who can say enough about Noam Chomsky? But some of the greatest foundations of my knowledge, right there, definitely, that I used into putting into the book.
Yeah, one thing before reminds me of the documentary The Weight of Chains, which is about how America basically goes over to Yugoslavia, Bosnia, Kosovo, and kind of starts it's hard to explain. They cause problems between the two kind of nations and even within the nations, so that there's civil wars and the kind of divide and a lot of the laws change, and then America basically comes in as the savior, funds the kind of, gives them an American education system and lots of branded stores, and again the Rothschilds owned banks. And those places in the world, there's people just saying this is just another state of America, and they're proud of that because of their kind of lifestyle. But it divided up entire countries. It divided up families just because of people were different religions and things like that. Then they leave the country, and they were living side by side in peace for decades, if not centuries.
Yeah, another really formative influence for me was John Pilger from Australia, a filmmaker, and his film that had the most impact on me is The War on Democracy. And for the first half of it, talked about the CIA-backed Venezuela coup in 2002. And then the other half of the movie talks about how, starting from the 50s, how we overthrew Mossadegh and we overthrew Allende and Arbenz in Chile and Guatemala, respectively. And So, and we definitely see, like you're saying, that the CIA goes into these places. They give people who are opposing the ruling power some money, help them out, give them some arms perhaps, and give them support, to go ahead and take on that government. Well, we got caught doing that a couple of times here in the States. So what we did was we formed front organizations. So the CIA gets caught red-handed at something, so Reagan says, well, I don't really like this, because I have to keep saying, I don't recall that, I don't remember that, I don't recall that. So I'm tired of saying that. So instead of us being implicated directly, why don't we put front organization, most notably the National Endowment for Democracy. And so that was actually linked directly that they funded parties that opposed Chavez in Venezuela for that 2002 coup. So that's the point we were at there, and they were using these front organizations. Now they have gone ahead and moved out to a further kind of a level or front organization. I recently saw a documentary called How to Start a Revolution, I think it was, on Current TV, which is owned by Al Gore. So I probably should have known better, but they tell you the story of Gene Sharp, who has been involved in writing about nonviolent means of revolution. And so if you look into this institution, they paint him in this picture to be this kindly elderly gentleman with his wide-eyed, eager assistant, a female, younger female. She's just an idealist, and you think, God, these people are trying to change the world. Well, the NED has given them practically all of their funding. The CIA is linked to them, and then when you look at movements like in Serbia, towards the end of the 90s, when they had their revolution there was a group called Otpor that was behind that. And they said that they used Gene Sharp's techniques, but basically that's all been linked to the CIA now. And now, as you say, it's happened in this country, and of course now we see it today in Egypt, in Syria. That's exactly what's going on. They were the ones that, because Otpor was the ones that basically set off the Arab Spring there in Egypt. So now that they've been linked to the NED, the CIA, at least if nothing else, thereby, because we know that the NED is a front organization for the CIA. So you've got Otpor starting this revolution down there, and then who do they bring in? Is somebody who studied in California. I've heard he's an American citizen, Morsi, but I'm not totally certain of that. I haven't done all the research to show that conclusively yet, but he did study at a university in California. So how convenient. Now we've got this guy who's Americanized, there in charge. So, like I say, when you put it all together, you can see you're totally right. That's exactly what we do, is we go in and we foment unrest. We get somebody in that we want in that's going to be friendly to our interests. And, if we can't do it that way, then we'll do it militarily.
Yeah, well, it's a similar situation with like Libya and Afghanistan as well, just causing problems and then pretending to be the solution.
Exactly, true. And of course, most people don't know that too, that Gaddafi had proposed switching the African dinar instead of the dollar for the global currency, among the OPEC nations for oil. So America doesn't have any gold. So what did we have to do? We'd be paying $2,500 an ounce to then turn around and buy oil with it. So he had to go, and of course he had to be villainized. To do that. It's what they always do, is they villainize democratically elected leaders. In Gaddafi's case, I'm not 100% certain if he's democratically elected, but certainly we know we did it to Mossadegh in Iran, we did it to Arbenz in Guatemala, we did it to Allende in Chile. We have a whole history of it. We take out somebody who's a democratically elected leader who is not friendly to our interests, and we put a dictator in who brutally terrorizes their people. And then, of course, we always have a convenient excuse. If they don't go our way, then we can say they are bad people. We must go get them.
Yeah, I just want to say before we do come to the end of the show, go to facebook.com/United Slaves of Amerika. America is spelled with a K, remember? And all these kind of things, I've seen you post multiple times. You've written a lot of text with the images, and you've put up a lot of videos as well. And lots of your fans as well, just constantly adding this similar kind of information. It's almost confusing to me what is posted by yourself and by your fans, because it's all just a big like list of information.
Yeah, and then definitely, once again, that's what I promote on my page is unity, and the way I see it is it's everybody's page. I want everybody's input, and because how are we going to move forward as a global people, if we aren't all communicating with each other, and then it's exactly like, say, those who are in power, that's what they want, is to keep us divided. And if at least we can have a few places like Exposing the Truth, your page, my page, where we promote that kind of unity, and that kind of speaking of the truth, then that's how we are going to be able to overcome the challenges that we need to get the kind of changes, social reform that we would like to see.
So what do you think about some kind of conspiracy theorists? They see the kind of divide and conquer mentality, and then that they think, that's what the New World Order wants. And then they see kind of unifying theories. Lots of things about unity, even like the Venus Project and things like that, and they're just like, unity, that's what the New World Order wants as well. So what do you think about that kind of mentality, that they think that this New World Order is about dividing and unity at the same time?
I think that there's a distinction between collectivism and unity. And it's basically that, what we're doing is trying to make things the best that we can for everybody. But we don't say that we have to include everybody in a particular mindset to do that. It's like I said, that's why I asked for 3 simple changes, because I think everybody can agree with those, and then, like I say, once we've gotten those changes into place, then we can all, speak reasonably, intelligently about what other changes we would like to see, and have those kinds of discussions where we have a government where our voices are going to be truly represented, which they certainly are not now.
So very quickly, in the last couple of minutes, what did you want to say about the kind of Israel-Palestine situation?
Basically, as soon as that recent fighting broke out in the Operation Pillar of Cloud, I started posting about how it was wrong that Israel was illegally occupying Palestinian territory, such as it is wrong for America to be occupying Afghanistan and Iraqi territories. And people started really coming at me hard, and they think it's anti-Semitism, which it is not, and it's just looking logically and rationally at a situation. And once again, I had seen documentaries on it by Pilger. I had read Chomsky, and what he had to say about it, and these are very highly respected sources that I had never known to be dishonest about anything, and were always spot on with everything they said. So that was all I was armed with at the time. But once I started taking heat from people on my posts about it, I started doing more hard research. Because I'm just not one that wants to not see all sides. So they would present me their evidence, and then I would research it, and then I would invariably find out, no, you're mistaken. That this is really the way it is. Israel is illegally occupying this territory. And so, it just led me to, actually, I traced from Noah to Jacob, to show that the Zionists who control this agenda are not even of the lineage that has a religious birthright, which that's one of the biggest things that it's touted as. But it's really that a religion has been hijacked for political purposes and political gain. And the 12 tribes of Israel made a covenant with God, and those are the only Jewish people that would be, able to claim that as their, promised land. And so most of these Jews that are in the Zionist agenda are Ashkenazi Jews, which came from the region around southern Russia. So they've kind of migrated all around, and, basically they chose Judaism because their country was set between two countries where one was Christian, one was Muslim. They were both warring at the time, and they said, pick a side. You're right in the middle of us, and we want to know whether we've got an ally or not. So they ran it up the middle and said, well, we'll just choose Judaism. And then they've basically, since they chose Judaism for that political purpose, they've used it to drive a political agenda ever since. and they were a warlike people, and that's all they did was go into countries and conquer lands and take them for their own and claim, I've got a state here. And that's the same thing that we still see Israel doing today. It's the same lineage, which is not included in the 12 tribes of Israel. And there is still no basis for an argument based on religion, because as the Orthodox Jews rabbis state, that their covenant is currently broken with God. They had broken their covenant with God by worshiping false idols, and Jesus' blood was the offering of a new covenant. And the Jews did not accept him as their Messiah, so they are still in a broken covenant because they did not accept the new covenant that God offered. So according to the Torah, they are supposed to remain in exile for the rest of their days until Christ comes back to earth, and only then if they accept him as their Messiah. So anybody that says that they have a religious claim to that land is mistaken. I've done all the research. I've done hours and hours of it, just to find out who's right. Who's right on this. I want to know the truth more than I want to know the way I view things or what my perspective is on something, whether it's right or wrong. Let's look at the facts and let's find out what's right or wrong about it.
Yeah, I find when people are talking about Palestine and they're kind of pro-Israel, usually they're Catholic or Jewish themselves. Then it's always about Hamas. I don't think Hamas should really represent all of Palestine, but whenever someone says something bad about Palestine, it's always about Hamas.
Yeah, and I find that to be so unfortunate too. And that's why I do advocate nonviolent means. Because if you give them any fuel for that fire, of course, that's what we see happening is a consistent pattern of Israel attacking and being aggressive. Then Palestine fires back, and Israel does it under the radar. But when Palestine does it, it's all over the news. So then they say, oh, well, we have to defend ourselves. But actually, if you look back, there's been 11 conflicts in the area since Israel was created by the UN. There have been 11 conflicts, and by my count, there are 9 times that they were on offense. And the most I would give anybody would be 7, 2, and 2